Hello, everyone. Welcome to another mind-bending edition of the Cybersecurity Matters podcast. I'm your co-host, Dominic Vogel, and joining me as always is my dapper co-host, Mr. Christian Redshaw. Christian, who's our guest today?
Wow, you're not even going to ask me how I'm doing. You just want to get straight to the meat and potatoes, eh?
I'm all business today. I can tell that you're alive and well, so it's all good.
Yeah, and it's important for the viewers to know that we're both doing well. And so our guest today is Anthony Green. He is the security engineer at Chartered Professional Accountants of BC, and he is an all-around great guy, very relational and very smart.
Awesome. We'll take a pause here. We'll bring Anthony on board, and we'll have an amazing conversation. So everyone, please stay tuned.
Anthony Green, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so you are a security engineer for Chartered Professional Accountants of BC. What does that mean for us layman business audience here? What is your role, and how did you get involved in cybersecurity?
All right, well, let's start with the question about my role. So my role is the cybersecurity engineer, but really I am kind of the point person for cybersecurity at CPABC. So my job isn't always technically engineering like what you would hear, what it would be normally, right? So I've done a lot of stuff outside of engineering, like engaging membership on cybersecurity through podcasts, similar like this. I also work with my manager to create our cybersecurity roadmap and implement lots of cybersecurity technologies. A lot of it is project management of cybersecurity as well. And a piece of it is compliance and auditing, since we are a public body and we have to follow laws such as FOIPA. We take credit cards, so PCI, stuff like that.
So I understand that you were in retail previously, correct?
Yeah, so I started my cybersecurity career at London Drugs. I actually started in hardware support. So I started getting kind of an internship doing hardware support, fixing computers. But during that time, I kind of befriended or bugged him enough for him to like me, the corporate data security officer at that time. And once I finished my diploma at BCIT in computer information technology, he decided to take me on with a security analyst internship to see how it would go. And I ended up staying there for about 2.5 years until I got a great opportunity to be a security engineer at CPABC.
That's amazing. I always love hearing people's origins stories, especially how they got into the cybersecurity space. So thank you for sharing that, Anthony. And something which we were chatting about before we started recording was talking again about at least high level, maybe best practices or basic security hygiene. A lot of people still don't know about. So maybe starting on the consumer side of things, what are some basic cyber hygiene steps that everyday people should be thinking about, even with stuff like their online banking?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from CPA works with a lot of financial organizations, and something that we've recently been seeing is financial organizations now using multi-factor authentication. And there's different types of forms of multi-factor authentication, right? There's the kind of the basic, I would say, is the one where they ask you for your security question as well as your password. And then it gets into SMS type 2FA. And then ideally you have token multi-factor authentication, where you actually have an app that gives you a token and you actually have to type in that token with your password as well.
Just curious on your thoughts here. I know I'm often hearing from a lot of European friends that online banking there has had multi-factor for years. And here in Canada, still it's not widespread. I certainly know with all the financial institutions I use, none of them have multi-factor authentication. Is that because of different, aspects or approaches to security and privacy? Is that something that we'll just keep seeing a bit more common practice here in Canada?
I think so. I think a lot of it is also because the Canadian government isn't necessarily imposing a lot of security laws the way they are in Europe or, in other places. But we are kind of starting to see that with the CCPA recently that came in. So I think that actually within the next 5 years, we are going to start seeing laws like that, especially more for consumer protection. I think that eventually there will be some kind of law that says if you're taking consumer data, you need to have some minimum safeguards, right? Similar to how, PCI DSS is pretty much Visa, MasterCard, and American Express saying, okay, because we're allowing all these companies to use credit cards, we're going to create these minimum security standards. In this case, this was private organizations that came together, but I could see this happening on kind of a government side as well.
And then on the, so you talked about the consumer side. So on the business side, let's say for a small business or even a small accounting firm, what are some best practices or again, security, hygiene, and basics that they as a small organization should look at embracing or implementing?
That's a really good question. So what I like to suggest is when people say best practices, stuff like that, it's the best way is to follow a security framework, because a security framework is basically a collection of best practices laid out for you in almost like a checklist type of way of how you can implement it. Now, security frameworks can range, right? So there's very simple ones like CIS Top 20, or the one that I would suggest all SMBs look at is the Canadian Cyber Secure. That's a voluntary certification that Canada has actually released, basically trying to help these small to medium businesses increase their cyber hygiene. So like these accounting firms, like you mentioned. Now, a lot of these things in these cybersecurity frameworks, especially at the lower ones, like the easier ones, like the CIS Top 20 and the Cyber Secure, a lot of the stuff you can do are free. Like, for example, secure your devices. Part of that is just changing the default password, stuff like that. However, once you get to an enterprise level, you may have heard of something called NIST or something like SOC 2. That's stuff that enterprises will spend lots of money and lots of different tools to follow to get certified for those frameworks. But as an SMB, you don't need to go to that level. You can just follow something easy, and a lot of it's stuff like do some security awareness training, have some phishing tests, make sure everyone has a unique password, stuff like that.
Now, Anthony, you have talked about organizations minimizing their cyber risk as they expand their digital footprint. Can you talk a little bit about digital transformation and the role of cybersecurity in that?
I think it can be a good thing and a bad thing, because with digital transformation, it really depends on your expertise, right? If you are going and you say you have already, a good supply chain, good process, and you don't know anything about computers, and you try to move to a digital world, there's a good chance that you'll be doing a lot of things insecurely by accident. However, if you are, like an on-prem environment, you already have some kind of IT department, or not an IT department, even an IT person. These days, it's as easy as it's ever been to actually increase your cyber hygiene and move more towards digital. And what I mean by that is more towards kind of a cloud. These days, it's very easy to move your papers into a database kind of stuff. You can scan it. If you have the expertise or if you're willing to learn, it's as easy as it's ever been.
Oh, that's awesome.
Anthony, you mentioned a really interesting point there about the cloud, we see organizations, smaller businesses, just sending all their systems and data into the cloud, and many of them just sort of saying, well, it's in the cloud, I don't need to worry about it anymore. How important is that understanding the concept of shared responsibility, that just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean that you aren't responsible for a portion of its security? I wonder if you can enlighten us in terms of, again, maybe what shared responsibility means.
So this is actually especially important for us specifically because we're a public body. So I mentioned that before. What does that mean? In BC, public bodies need to abide by something called FOIPA. And in one sentence, let's just say that means all our data needs to stay within Canada, because we don't trust other countries to have our data because they can take our data, right? So part of that if that shared responsibility model, say we go to some cloud company in the States, it's our responsibility to make sure that that data does not get accessed by anybody else, right? If that gets accessed by the government or something, that's not the US company's fault. That's our fault because we allowed that to go to the States. That's from a kind of OIPA point of view. So from the kind of consumer point of view, say you use something like a cloud service like Dropbox or something. If they get, it's up to you to make sure that they have the proper security controls, right? Because if they do get hacked and that data gets stolen, it is up to you in the court of law to prove that you've done your best to make sure that data is safe. So for example, if you're using a cloud service, you want to make sure that that's a legitimate cloud service like Dropbox and not Tom and Jerry's basement, right? You want to make sure that that data is being encrypted versus you want to make sure that they actually tell you that that data is encrypted versus just hope that it is, right? A lot of times, what we actually do is we send questionnaires to companies that we want to use with all these common questions to make sure that we can say, yes, we've assessed them and we believe that their security maturity is at least on our level or higher.
So when I look at your organization, this is my take on it, is that you're looking after accountants and accounting firms and then the interests of the general public, effectively the clients of these accounting firms. Now, I think about all of the precious sensitive information that's circulating within the networks of these accountants or accounting firms or even law firms for that matter. So why does cybersecurity matter for an accounting firm, in your opinion? What is the value of cybersecurity for an accounting firm?
Well, there's a few ways to look at it from a business point of view and a consumer point of view. Let's start with the consumer point of view. From a consumer point of view, there's so much documents that go through the internet that you may not even know, right? So you send everyone has, or not everyone, but a lot of people have an accountant, right? And your accountant has a lot of your sensitive information. So if your accountant's cybersecurity isn't very good, that indirectly, or it could even be directly it'll affect you, right? You can be as secure as possible on your side, but if you're a lawyer, your accountant, if anybody else doesn't have the right cybersecurity controls in place, there's only so much you can do, right? It's kind of like the weakest link type of thing. From a business point of view, you do not want to be the accountants that got hacked, right? Because they're going to go and, if I see my accountant got hacked, next year I'm going to go to the next accountant that didn't get hacked, right? The one that's going to say that I actually do take care of your security. Yeah, and we've actually seen an increase of, these professional organizations not allowing sending, they're sending password protected documents, trying not to send it over email. And a lot of times it's actually the users that will send that document over email first.
So Anthony, in your perspective, you alluded to it there, and this was going to be my follow-up question. Of the accounting firms and professionals that you see here and across Canada and maybe beyond, how would you say that they are doing overall in the aggregate? Are they doing well? Is there a little bit of room for improvement, or is there a lot of room for improvement, in your opinion?
I mean, I can't speak for all of Canada, but I can speak for BC, and what I can say is there's a lot of interest. Like when we do these cybersecurity things, there's a lot of accountants that are very interested in learning. And I believe that it's simply about giving them the knowledge, because the type of questions they ask, the type of stuff that they do, a lot of times, if I tell somebody or tell these accountants about a password manager, some of them, not all accountants, but some of them will go and listen to this advice and go implement it right away and then send a thank you saying, that's great. I didn't know, I heard about this, but I didn't know exactly why. So a big part of, I think, what I can actually speak upon is I can see that a lot of these people are interested in cybersecurity. And for example, our CPA summit last year, we didn't have a summit, it was canceled. But last year we actually were partnering with ISACA Vancouver to create a cybersecurity track for, our big CPA summit. And that had a lot of interest until it was canceled. So maybe next year.
Yeah, well, that's very encouraging. It sounds like at least the level of interest and engagement there, it seems very high. But overall, in the big picture, having assessed their risks or built mature cybersecurity programs, we're not quite that far along that track. But there is definitely a plan to move things in that direction.
Well, I can tell you from the CPABC side, we don't actually go and create these programs for these accountants. We just accredit them. So we work with the School of Business to make sure, and once they become CPAs, we make sure they follow the ethic laws and stuff like that. The cybersecurity is just stuff that, one of our main pillars is to protect. And because we don't actually do cybersecurity for them, what we're trying to do is teach them or give them enough resources so that they can at least kind of dip their foot in the water, and then they can go and take it from there.
Very good.
Anthony, this has been such an amazing conversation. Christian and I genuinely appreciate your insights and your wisdom in this space, and open invitation to come back anytime. Genuinely appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much, Dominic, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on your podcast. I've been a big fan for quite a while, so.
It's good to finally have you on.
It's always good to have our amazing supporters on. So, Anthony, thank you so much. And Christian and I will be right back momentarily to wrap up today's episode. That was a really interesting conversation with Anthony. He's very, very intelligent, has really great wisdom in the short few years he's been in the cybersecurity field. But I know, I think I can speak for both of us, that we really enjoyed the conversation with him.
Definitely.
Christian, what was one of your key takeaways from what Anthony had to say today?
Well, I was really encouraged by what he said, actually, when he was talking about how their organization, one of their key pillars is protect, and that always resonates with me. I'm so glad to hear that it's such a priority for them, and therefore they have someone in his role. And really, it's encouraging to see that there's a greater level of awareness among their members, among the accounting firms that effectively they serve, and in turn, the customers, the clients of those accounting firms are going to benefit from better cybersecurity protections around their sensitive information.
Yeah, what a great takeaway, and I really, really liked how Anthony was really talking again about those concrete steps, to your point there, about what they're doing to help to protect their member organizations, their member businesses. I think it's really, really important to be able to be a great communicator. I think Anthony is a terrific bridge there for the CPA community, particularly in BC, to not just be coming at from a technical side, but really providing very pragmatic guidance and actionable security advice to CPAs right across the province. So that was very encouraging, to see that and to speak with him.
Not only that, but he looks great on camera, and he chose the perfect color shirt to go with the color scheme of our show. So I think he was dialed in on multiple levels there.
Absolutely, yeah. His dashing young looks brought much needed youthfulness to our two tired, old, withered faces. So it was nice to have a nice splash of youth. Yeah, that's right. So, but we're very grateful for Anthony for joining us today, and obviously, as always, we're always appreciative of our loyal listeners and viewers who tune in every week to spend time of their week with us. Please do be sure to check out previous Cybersecurity Matters podcast episodes on our YouTube page, as well as on the Conversations That Matter YouTube page for other sister podcasts that fly under that banner. But until next time, be well, be safe, and we will catch you next time on the Cybersecurity Matters podcast.
Thanks for watching.